It's time, and we have a quorum. I now call to order this meeting of the Subcommittee on Issues Relating to Human Resources Training and Planning. Item 1 on the agenda, the training of imported labor in the construction, transportation, and residential care home sectors. And relevant group of officials will come in to talk about their areas of expertise. And if you wish to speak, please press the button relevant to indicate your intention to speak to us. First of all, the Development Bureau, and then the Transport and Logistics Bureau, and finally, the Construction Industry Council to come in, and the LWB to come in. First of all, our importation scheme for labor actually has the spirit that local employees will be given priority. And so one definite precondition is that the employers applying for labor importation must prove that he has already attempted to find local employees. And all employees imported must be skilled labor. In other words, imported workers definitely are skilled in the areas in which they are being imported for. And our Development Bureau actually has released a set of requirements for imported workers, their qualification and their daily working hours, and the average days of work per month, and so on and so forth. And all of these requirements have been laid out. And the bottom line I'd like to reiterate is that they must be skilled and specialized in the area that they're imported for. And basically, their jobs will be no different from their local counterparts. Say, going into the construction site, according to legislation, they must be given a green card. I mean, local workers, and imported workers are no different, and they must, first of all, have passed the safety training certificate course, and then be issued a green card before they are allowed to go into the construction site. And also, imported workers also have to abide by the rule that designated jobs for designated workers, and so we're talking about semi-skilled laborers or skilled laborers. Or, alternatively, they can only carry out their duties under the supervision of semi-skilled or skilled workers. And all of these requirements are no different from those for local employees. And for certain types of jobs which are in the minority, there will be other requirements, especially those that are working low-shifting equipment, and they must also pass relevant tests. And local employees are required to meet that requirement, and imported workers are no different. And for imported workers, unless they have already been issued prior to coming to Hong Kong with the certificate, they will have to sit for the test in Hong Kong and get the certificate in Hong Kong. And also, we've got other supplementary measures, and all employers will have to do induction briefing for all imported workers on workers' benefits, as well as construction site safety culture, and also requirements, and so on and so forth. And also, our scheme requires that the principal contractor and employers must provide a safety supervisor on site to make sure that imported workers can operate equipment and machinery at construction sites safely. And all of these requirements, once again, are no different from the requirements for local employees. Thank you. And now, Transport and Logistics Bureau. Now, for labor importation for the transport sector, basically it's in two parts. First of all, we've got the aviation scheme, and then we've got the PLB and coach scheme. First of all, aviation scheme. Under the aviation scheme, franchise operators and operators holding certificates are eligible for importing laborers in the 10 specified categories. And the number of places in total, 6,300. And we already had 3 rounds of application. And all 6,300 places have been allocated. And in rolling forward this scheme, the Hong Kong Aviation Authority, as well as The transport and logistics bureaus have been in constant touch with the sector to gauge their views and to communicate with them as to the progress of the scheme. And the spirit of the scheme is to make sure that Hong Kong IA can maintain its safety standard as well as service standard. And in order to ensure that imported workers can perform properly and well and can adapt to Hong Kong's working environment, importers of these workers will provide relevant training targeting the areas in which they're imported for. And for customer-related job duties, we'll provide customer service training for these imported workers to make sure that they really can provide standards that are commensurate with Hong Kong's reputation as a world aviation hub. And also relevant employers will have to tailor-made a training program for imported workers because the airport working environment is unique. And Hong Kong Aviation Authority is the supervisory authority here, of course. And every year they will review the scheme and will assess and evaluate the training program. For instance, on apron, there are job duties that involve driving vehicles, because the driving system of imported workers may be different from that of local employees, and so there must be converging courses provided for the benefit of imported workers. And apart from these specialized training for importers of workers, Hong Kong Aviation Authority also provides a training including a 2-day fundamental course and also a workers' benefit briefing and also workshops on Hong Kong's work culture in order to help imported workers in adapting to Hong Kong's working environment. And all the feedback that we have gotten from both workers as well as importers has been positive. And if necessary, even more courses will be provided in order to help imported workers to get fit in to the Hong Kong's work environment. Now, I would like to defer to the Transport Department to talk about the PLB and coach scheme. Now, for this scheme, the Transport and Logistics Bureau launched the scheme in July 2023 on the precondition that local employees' interests will not be jeopardized. Imported workers will be brought in order to help the transport sector, and 2 rounds have been done. And 1,400 imported drivers have already passed a local driving test, and over 1,300 drivers have been deployed on local routes. After being granted a place under the quota system, the importers will have to bring in the imported drivers and then to provide suitable training. And also the imported drivers will have to meet the same standards as well as the same requirements as local drivers. And also induction training courses will have to be provided in order to raise safety awareness as well as customer service culture awareness of local drivers. And also local routes driving and initiation course will have to be provided. And local drivers must, within 8 weeks, pass the driving test and complete the training course. And stakeholders liaison group has been set up with parties of importers, the government, and relevant parties being represented. We are here to hear whatever views you may have on the PLB and coach scheme. Next, SWD. Now, this is about the importation of care workers. In June 2023, we have launched this special scheme for importation of care workers. And so as long as local employees have been given priority, this scheme is applicable to RCH as well as RCHEs because there is an urgent demand for workers in these sectors. By the end of 2024 October, we've got 1,700 odd imported workers, and 6,300 of them are care workers. And in accordance with contract, as well as code of practice, the importers of these care workers will have to provide induction as well as on-the-course training for both importers as well as local workers. And all of these courses will have to be provided by SWD certificated or accredited organizations. And the number of hours of training is around 21 to 24 hours in order to raise the techniques of care workers in caring for their customers. And by the end of March 2025, 7 training courses are now providing these relevant training courses that have been accredited by SWD. And so far, 2,200 imported workers have received subsidy to go through the scheme. And our requirement also says that within 8 weeks of the arrival of imported workers, they will have to attend a briefing on workers' rights and obligations. And also assistance will be provided for imported workers to get adapted to Hong Kong's life as well as working environment. And we welcome whatever views you may have on our scheme. We've got 6 members having indicated that they would like to raise comments. Mr. Mack, first, 5 minutes. Or Mr. Lam, sorry. I've got questions on 3 aspects. First of all, about the construction industry. As we all know, the construction industry is really an industry that features job duties with high risk. And of course, we have the green card system to inculcate safety culture in the minds of workers. I'd like to know whether the government has compiled any statistics as to industrial accidents that have occurred among imported workers, whether it is on the high side compared to local workers. Now, even if the number is on the low side, it doesn't mean the situation is not bad. Because we have encountered cases where if the injuries are not particularly serious, the contractors would discourage the imported workers from reporting them to the authority. And so I'd like to know, from your observation, what about the industrial accident rate among imported workers? And if indeed a problem is identified, is it possible for you to target your training course to help them to solve this problem? Of course, a green card requirement is a fundamental requirement because they cannot go into the construction site without it. However, for other high-risk job duties, do you provide any further, more in-depth training for them? For instance, lifting heavy equipment in mid-air, or lifting heavy weight into mid-air, and so on and so forth, or working within very close space? Do you provide targeted, specialized training in safety for these imported workers? My next question has to do with the transport sector. In answering Special Finance Committee's question, the Transport Department said that they have received 33 complaints against the service attitude of imported drivers. And this may involve wrong setting of points and also wrong routing and so on and so forth. And 28 of these complaints have been substantiated. Of course, this is no indication that imported drivers definitely are worse off in terms of their service attitude, because the same problem could be found with local drivers. But be that as it may, I'd like to know whether you have looked into why did these complaints against imported drivers have occurred. Is it because of their unfamiliarization with or unfamiliarity with local service attitude and so on and so forth? And if you do discover that there is a problem, would you provide any particular training for these imported drivers in order to improve their service attitude and so on and so forth? Of course, training comes in various forms, and everybody knows that if you want to go into a construction site, you need a green card. But some trade unions discover that fees are being charged on imported workers for providing very sloppy training courses. And so they are providing bogus training courses in order to swindle imported workers out of their money. And also, how do you supervise such a situation? Of course, some employers do provide legitimate training for imported workers, but we are also worried about bogus training being forced upon imported workers by their importers.
The Bureau, please. I'd like to thank Mr. Lam for being so observant. Well, we do take it seriously. In relation to the safety of both imported labor as well as local labor. We have the same requirements for both imported and local labor. And then we work through the green card system as well as safety training courses. They need to pass the test before they get the green card. Whenever we spot any hazards or risks, we'll try to enhance the relevant element in the training courses so the imported and local labor would pay attention to the potential risks. And then I also mentioned that for mechanical operations that would carry a high degree of risk, even for local workers, they have to be trained and pass a test before they can take on the task. And we have the same requirement for imported workers. Say, for example, bulldozers. Imported workers have to be licensed before they can operate one. So same requirements for both. And then under the importation scheme, we have an additional requirement. The employer as well as the contractor must assign a safety officer to guide the imported workers to make sure that they have followed fully all the safety requirements. As you know, that the scheme is mainly for public projects, and so far, according to departments, it is reported that they haven't noticed any irregularities concerning the safety performance of the workers. There isn't anything that is worrying. But of course, as the member has pointed out, we do have a lot of briefing sessions. Safety will be highlighted at such sessions. Finally, a word about the training fees. I think it is not just about the fees for training alone. We are concerned about the possibility of the imported workers being freezed and being forced to pay dearly for the training fees or other sorts of fees. Well, we have made it clear that all the fees must be itemized, and other than the food and boarding, no other fees should be imposed. Should any irregularities be exposed, we will take follow-up action. Mr. Choi, please. For this question, I would like to defer to the AD. Yes, AD, please. Thank you, Chair, for your question. Just now, 33 cases were mentioned, 28 were substantiated. Among such cases, most of them are related to minibus drivers. We did go through the cases, as mentioned by the member. Well, sometimes it is about stopping the vehicle at a wrong position, or when asked about the fees and the dropping off points, they cannot satisfy the needs of the customers or the passengers, and then they became the subject matter of complaints. We did talk to the operators, and operators did tell the drivers to improve their performance. Well, generally speaking, the number of such cases is not on the high side. And then at the district level, both the residents as well as the district council members told us that, generally speaking, such PLB drivers have been performing well. Probably those cases took place when they were still early in their sort of career in Hong Kong. Next, Mr. Lai Tung Kwok. Thank you, Chair. Well, the TD takes the lead in relation to the importation of drivers for the PLB as well as the coach trades. altogether 1,700 places have been sort of assigned. So far, 1,400 drivers have passed their driving test and get licensed. In other words, there are 300 drivers who haven't passed the test, or a quota of 300 hasn't been exhausted. So my question is, what actually is the case and why? Chair. So that's my first question. Yes. TLB, please. Thank you, Mr. Lai, for your question. Just now, Mr. Lai mentioned certain figures. Well, in fact, in the second round, the number of quota it was only sort of offered in the second half of year 2024. Commercial operators have their own business decisions. They may want to apply in batches instead of doing it in one go. Well, for you to arrange for a driver to come to Hong Kong to get trained and to be tested for a license, all such would take time. Well, we've noticed that for the remaining drivers, either they have already arrived in Hong Kong for training or at other stages. So I don't think we have many quota or many places not taken up. Chair, then that takes me to another question. When they have been assigned a quota, then they will apply to the immigration for approval. I think most of the drivers are from the mainland. I want to know how long does it take to finish that process. Bureau? Yes. Commissioner? Generally speaking, our understanding is that it will take about 2 weeks' time to process the application. But of course, that's on the condition that all the documents are ready and there's no need for extra paperwork to be carried out. And we do work very closely with the police to make sure that the procedures can be completed as soon as possible. If I may also add a word here, they would have to be given endorsement to have a working permit, and then the rest of the time is mainly spent on training and passing the test. That's for the information of a member. I have a follow-up question. Now, when a driver comes with a work visa and arrives in Hong Kong, you will then allow them to get a driving license directly without having to go through the test, and then they will get training, and then they will sit for a test to get a license to drive commercial vehicles. Well, I want to know how much time would that take up. So he has to queue up to pass the test. If he's lucky enough to get it in a single examination, then he has to undergo pre-service training. So I want to know altogether how much time would that entail. And he has to complete that before he can really start work. In paragraph 14, Chair, we say that over 70% of the imported drivers from arrival in Hong Kong to starting work would take no more than 8 weeks. That's the general case. 70% of them would take no more than 2 months. In other words, there are still quite a large number of drivers who have come to Hong Kong and owing to one reason or other, they are not able to get the license on the first take, and they may have to do it again. Well, I have heard that there are drivers who failed 2 times, 3 times, and they have to be sent back to their place of origin, and then there has to be a fresh application. Well, for the employers importing such drivers, they're wondering whether there's room for improvement. Don't forget that they have been given a period of 2 years, and then all the pre-service procedures will take up 8 weeks, and they are not being paid, and that's because they haven't got a job to hold on to. So when it comes to the formulation of your policy, have you ever considered this particular window? You're supposed to allow them to come here to work for 2 years, but then for the minimum, they have to stay here without payment, without salary for 2 months. So I want to know whether you are restricted by certain legal requirements so that you would only allow them to take the test for a commercial vehicle license after they have arrived. Don't you think that you can sort of advance it? Have you ever considered the possibility? Commissioner. Yes, I'll ask the Assistant Commissioner to take the question. Thank you, Mr. Lai. Well, I think you know quite a lot about the background. Let me clarify one point. For the TD to talk to the trade, we do have facilitation facilities. Now, they don't have to arrive in Hong Kong personally to get the paperwork done. They can have it done through an agent or the Hong Kong driving school. What we try to do is to allow them to come here with an examination date already assigned, so that they come with a specific date of commencement with them. Well, when they come, and you want to know whether the first period can be sort of discounted. My understanding from the Immigration Department is that no, that cannot be sort of taken off the 2 years' time. Well, they don't have to come here for a long period of time, and they are not working. They don't have a job. We have to clarify that. In reality, they are not having a job. They are only working when they're really at the driving wheel. So for the first stage, they come here to learn to drive, for example, or to take the driving test for once or even twice. Have you ever talked to the TD to see if there can be some flexibility? Can they come as a visitor to complete this part of the procedures? And after that has been completed, and after he has got the commercial vehicle license, and then he comes again with a proper work visa and report work. Now, the employer has this worker for 2 years, so probably the employer would like this worker to be working for him for 2 full years. I think that's also the government's policy. Otherwise, you're wasting a lot of time at the initial stage of the 2 years' time. So for the government's policy intention, I think this phenomenon is not good. You are importing the laborers to deal with the driver shortage problem. So have you ever considered fine-tuning it? If not, would you reconsider the case? Now, if the scheme is to continue, I think you need to consider whether this should be sort of adjusted. Administration. I will give a brief answer. Thank you, Mr. Lai, for your comments and suggestions. We've already given out all the 1,700 quota. We are also evaluating the implementation of the scheme. We're also assessing the needs of the trade. Your comments have been noted, and we will consider your views when we try to fine-tune the arrangements, including the examination taking arrangements. Thank you. Next, Mr. Dennis Leung. 1st May is around the corner, and for the FTU, we have been visiting workers throughout the city. Over lunch, we went to Chinese restaurants, and then the dim sum chefs asked us not to have more imported workers. They are telling us that as a result of the importation of workers, their jobs have been taken away. Now, we have got 3 different bureaus or departments. In their opening remarks, they did say that they would give priority to local labor. But in fact, the unemployment rates have risen slightly, so this isn't satisfactory. I do hope that when you evaluate the policies, the current ratio of 2 to 1 is not working well. 2 to 1 is the ratio for the entire enterprise rather than the particular job positions involved. Now, you may very well be employing 2 or 3 workers only, but then different job types are being mixed together. So, in other words, you are taking away the jobs from the local skilled workers in the same category. So please reconsider it. Instead of having this 2-to-1 ratio alone, I think you should really look at the relevant number of skilled workers involved in the application and try to find out whether there can be certain adjustments. I don't like the idea of fine-tuning the scheme, because by fine-tuning, you may want to do it better or relaxing the requirements, etc. So I don't like the term fine-tuning. I really want you to make sure that it is only when you can't recruit a worker for that particular position and then you allow for imported labor to come in. Well, in fact, there are local workers who have been laid off, and then when they come back to try to ask for a job again, the boss will say that, well, we have already filled your place with imported labor. And what about visits? It seems that there is a lack of transparency. And in fact, the Hong Kong citizens are worried about their job security in the future. So I know many employers in the business sector are complaining that they can't get workers and they lack a lot of skilled workers. But at the same time, please really take a serious look of the employment picture. There are employees who are not able to get a job, and then they try to fill a vacancy, and yet they've always been told that the vacancy has been filled, but in fact it was filled by a imported worker.
Which officials would like to respond? Or Mr. Leung, which department do you want a response from? I don't think they can really give me any proper response because they are simply following instruction from the top. So now we're talking about 3 sectors: transport, construction, as well as care for the elderly, and the labor sector has really not been properly consulted. And it seems that they have set up a lot of barriers for us to raise views. We are not objecting wholesale the labor importation scheme. We just would like to draw your attention to some of the inadequacies of the scheme. Of course, you would require the employers to first of all take out advertisements for 4 weeks for local employees. But there have been cases where local people have interviewed for a particular job and then is given to understand that the position has already been filled. Only turns out that the position has been filled by a imported worker. And so is it possible for you to do a better job with the spot checks in order to ensure that priority indeed is being given to local workers? Development Bureau. Thank you. Let me try to respond to that point. And of course, we thank Mr. Leung's views. And of course, we do appreciate that he says that he understands a 2-to-1 ratio. But actually, apart from the 2-to-1 ratio, we've got other safeguards. Of course, for the construction industry, the number of imported workers is especially large. And so we do have safeguards for that. And after an employer has already recruited a imported worker, we will interview him, asking him how come it seems that the shortage of manpower seems to have relaxed a little bit. How come you still need to resort to foreign workers and so forth? And so our safeguards actually are quite strict. And indeed, we have turned down certain applications when we feel that there is no justification for it. Now, as for giving priority to local workers, now there are 2 parts. First of all, we will make sure that priority indeed is being given. And the second part is that the employers will also be required to set up training for local workers if he finds that he has difficulty in filling the local positions by local workers before he's being allowed to import foreign workers. No further views from Mr. Leung. Next, Mr. Yik. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Lai Dong Kwok. He has really taken words out of our mouths. that's indeed the problem faced by our trade. We have hired a imported worker from mainland, and so once he arrives in Hong Kong, we have to pay for his boarding, we have to pay for his food, and so on and so forth. And 70% of them have to complete the training within 8 weeks. Now, of course, you may say that it's for training, but because it's only for training, we're willing to pay for 2 hours of training every day so that he doesn't have to spend the night in Hong Kong and can spend the night or sleep on the mainland or at his home on the mainland, and that will save us money. And indeed, it would be very expensive for employers if they are required to pay for imported workers once they arrive in Hong Kong, not yet for carrying out their duties, but only to go through training and so on and so forth. And so that, but still, we have to swallow it. Of course, we would really like to give priority to local workers because actually it is not really that much cheaper, not much more expensive than importing foreign workers. Importing foreign workers actually is very expensive because it's only once every 2 years. And also we have to provide training for imported workers and so on and so forth. Now, for the first batch of imported workers, they are almost up for expiry. And according to the contract, they have to go back. And so does it mean that all 1,700 of them go back all at the same time? If that is the case, that would impact on the provision of transport service very, very seriously, especially the coach service and PLB service. And so they have to go back in tranches. And so some of them will only go back after the first batch has gone back. And so we really don't want to see a situation where there is all of a sudden a severe shortage of workers. And also for imported workers that have gone through training, is it possible for us to rehire them after 2 years? Of course, like foreign domestic helpers, the contract may be up for expiry in 2 years, and then they will go through a 2 weeks leave, and then they can be rehired for domestic helpers. We want to know whether this is the same for imported workers. Now, for the construction industry, indeed, because the number of jobs has decreased, of course, they have difficulty. But for transport sector and aviation sector, the number of jobs has been on the increase. And so it is a must for us to bring in imported workers. And not only to maintain the scheme at its present level, actually, we have to enhance it and expand the number because the third runway has already been thrown into operation. And also, you have only given us 50% of the manpower that we required. You still owe us 50% of the shortfall. And so you first of all have to make up for it. And of course, different trades have different situations. Now, for our industry, if you keep to the 2-to-1 ratio, definitely the airport will be short-handed. And for the airport, you must relax the ratio. Otherwise, the operation of a third runway cannot be given sufficient manpower support. And so we really need you to fine-tune your scheme and to really meet our needs. TLB, Madam Choi, and then Mr. Ma. I thank Mr. Yip for his question. Now, for the transport scheme, indeed, we are reviewing the scheme. We're also evaluating as to the manpower demand for the industry in the coming few years. And we hope that we can really secure the findings from the evaluation as soon as possible, and then we can announce a way forward. So we hope that we can announce for the benefit of the industry the way forward. Of course, we have taken note of the fact that indeed, you are facing a high cost of importing foreign workers, and we will take that into consideration in our review. Mr. Ma, I thank Mr. Yik for his question and comments. Now, for aviation sector, in April, we have granted the remainder quota, and the same is for PLB service quota. And we are reviewing the situation with a view to coming up with a way forward. Of course, the third runway has come into operation, and the number of passengers at the airport is increasing all the time. And we indeed will review the scheme for the benefit of determining whether to tweak the quota and other aspects of the scheme. Now, when the airport only had 2 runways, the airport had a staff size of 70,000. Now, additional runway has come into operation, and so 30% of the capacity has been added to the airport. And so you really need several tens of thousands of people in addition to the present staff to work at the airport. And so it is a must that you expand the quota of foreign workers importation for the airport. Mr. Ma, do you have anything to add? Next, Mr. Chen. I see that for the pre-service training, of course, it is mainly focused on the impartation of skills and techniques. Now, for PLB drivers and for care workers, of course, you are trying to train them for their skills. But what about language? Do these workers speak Cantonese? Are they familiar with Hong Kong's culture and way of life? Let me give an example. A care worker for a home may have difficulty in raising service standard if he or she cannot communicate properly with the clients because of language barrier. And so that would be a waste of training resources. Now, for imported workers, of course, they must meet certain requirements before they are allowed to be brought in. But if a driver of PLB doesn't even speak Cantonese and he cannot answer questions from passengers in Cantonese, then that would be not ideal as well. And also, for drivers that are being brought in, of course, they already are professional drivers before they're allowed to be brought in. And the employers still have to provide further training for them. And so that really increases the cost. And so you have to really strike a balance here. Is it possible for you to tell me whether you have really also provide training for their language skills? Development Bureau first. Do you have any requirements for their language abilities? Our guiding principle is that everything will be the same between imported workers and local workers. Now, for construction industry, it will be the same as local workers. We will not all of a sudden require them to speak English. What about residential homes and care workers? SWD. Indeed, Mr. Chen has got a point there. We must ensure that they have proper language abilities, because the crux of the scheme of importing care workers is to ensure that service standards at the homes are being secured. Of course, Hong Kong is a Cantonese-speaking community. So, and most of the imported workers are from Putonghua-speaking communities. And when they come into Hong Kong, we provide various venues for them to get training, and they'll get training in how to properly care for elderly people. And also we provide training for them to get adapted to Hong Kong's life. Yeah, of course, the focus is to help them to care for the elderly, but actually they already have mastered the skill before they are qualified for coming in, because now you are bringing them in when they are already qualified care workers, and at the same time you have to provide the same training for them to get them to sharpen their caring skills. So that seems to be a duplication of efforts. What I'm interested in is whether they have the language ability to communicate with their clients. Now, talking about homes, now for care workers, the SWD has no requirement for local care workers or importer workers to already master the caring skills. Actually, even for local workers, they can get on-the-job training at homes. And also they can get pre-service training, of course. But for care workers, they do not have to possess certain specialized skills before they are qualified to be care workers. This is the same for local as well as imported workers. Now I ask the Assistant Director to take the question. Now for coach and PLB service sector, for employers, as far as I understand, most of the imported drivers come from the Greater Bay Area, and they usually will select these drivers from communities in the Greater Bay Area that conversant in Cantonese. As far as we can observe, the imported drivers have no difficulty in communicating with passengers in Cantonese. In previous discussion, it's already mentioned that imported drivers may hold very high-grade licenses on the mainland. Say they may be professional bus drivers, but when they are being brought into Hong Kong, because it's right-wheel driving in Hong Kong, so these drivers will have to sit for driving tests for PLB licenses or other vehicles licenses relevant. And apart from having to pass the driving test, they also have to receive 16-hour pre-service training. And the training is not for sharpening driving skills, but also to familiarize them with legislative requirements and licensing requirements in Hong Kong, and also the courtesy of driving in Hong Kong and the driving culture in Hong Kong, and so on and so forth. And so the employers don't have to duplicate the training for these drivers in terms of driving skills. It is more for route familiarization training. Say they may be attached to a particular PLB service for some period of time so that they're familiarized with the route. I would like to follow up on a previous question. So in the 2 months of training, these imported workers live in Hong Kong, and also the employers who have to provide for boarding and for food and for subsistence for these imported workers. Is it possible for you to change the scheme a little bit so that they are allowed to receive such training on the mainland? Because we're talking about drivers, we're talking about driving skills. And these are already professional drivers before they come to Hong Kong. And if you allow them to receive such additional training on top of the driving skills on the mainland, then it saves employers a lot of money.
Thank you, Mr. Chen. I think your point is noted. No, not just noted. You have to explain why you're wasting the public money. Well, please explain, PS, as to why that cannot be carried out on the mainland. Our position is, under the imported labor scheme, we have to safeguard the job security of local workers. At the same time, we have to ensure road safety. Well, I'm trying to look at it from the perspective of the employer. The employer has to bear the cost of keeping them for the first 2 months. I think they should be trained on the mainland. If they're interested to work in Hong Kong, there is a way to do it. Well, there are certain skills which require the physical presence of the imported driver to be staying in Hong Kong, like getting familiar with the road conditions in Hong Kong, familiarize themselves with the laws of Hong Kong, and then for the route training, they have to understand where the signs indicating the bus stops are. So all such would require the physical presence of the driver. But all your concerns have been noted by us. Next, Ms. Lillian Kwok. Thank you, Chair. Let me start with a question. Well, for the construction industry, well, the imported workers would need a green card. That's basic before they can gain access to a construction site. Well, when they sit for the tests and when they get trained, when they attend the course, does this happen in Hong Kong? Yes, indeed. Well, the course would run for 1 or 2 days. Passing rate is also high. It's easy to arrange for a course for the attendance ASAP, so there isn't any problem. Another question is for the TD. Now, for the driving test, you have the written test prior to the road test. I think you also train them for the written test, right? And then after the written test has been passed, they will sit for the road test and then they get the commercial vehicle license, right? Yes. Well, for this particular class of driving license, they're supposed to have a private car driving license first. It's a matter of direct issue because they are exempted from the written test. For the commercial vehicle driving license test, first of all, they have to attend a 16-hour training course, which is pre-service. There is a flexibility here. They might be driving a bus, a PLB, etc. They have to pass a road test. And then the trainees will attend the 16-hour training course and have to pass that before they are qualified. And they have multiple choice questions. And then the courses are conducted mainly in Cantonese. I would like to thank the two departments. I started with those two questions. Probably you know what I'm after eventually. I cannot understand why such training courses have to take place in Hong Kong. Why can't we have some basic requirements? That is, they have to pass certain tests. They must reach certain standards before they can apply to come to Hong Kong. Well, in Australia, they've also got importation of labor schemes. They have got language requirements. Certain language requirements are needed before they can apply. Just now, certain members are worried about the language barriers. So by having such a prerequisite, this will be cleared. Well, employers don't want to employ somebody to pay for the training, not to mention that they may fail the test. This is the cost. So it's not just a matter of the dollar sign. You have to provide for the time. So time is money as well. So can you not train them while they are still on the mainland? Can they not complete the training course first? In particular, written tests or classroom teaching or classroom training. The written test is important because the road signs and the traffic signs are different. Even when we go to the mainland to drive, we have to get some to get familiarized with the road signs. Perhaps we can rely on IT, AI to provide a training to them on the mainland, and that would include language training as well. So perhaps we should be ensured that they pass certain standards before they can come. And then from that onwards, they can embark on the second stage training. So I want to know whether you are being systematic in your training structure, and can you not sort of have some procedures to be carried out on the mainland, saving time and cost? And the second part of my question is that can you not rely on AI to carry out training, in particular language training? Well, many people in the in the transport sector, and in fact many passengers tell us that the drivers do not speak Cantonese, and even if they want to get off at a certain point, the drivers just miss it. So perhaps we should make sure that they are qualified first. We don't want to fill the shortage while at the same time creating other problems. So perhaps you should explore other options to fine-tune the scheme. And then, as Mr. Chen has said, for the care industry, the majority of the recruits are already experienced care workers, including those from mainland. Caring standards would be rather universal throughout the world. I don't think we should waste time. I went to India and I worked together with Swiss nurses. And then even though we speak different languages, we do the work in the same way and we are ready on day one. So perhaps you should reconsider your requirements and be more specific so that we can tie in with the local characteristics and meet the local needs for the convenience of the community. Perhaps all the three bureaus can tell us as to whether certain training sessions can take place on the mainland and are there difficulties and why you are insisting that they should be carried out in Hong Kong. So Development Bureau followed by the TLB and then the LWB. Development Bureau, the green card requirement is within the labor laws. So we have to get recognition from the Labor Department before you can hold an examination. It must be in Hong Kong because there are certain security consideration, and that's why physically it has to take place in Hong Kong. For the green card course, it runs for a day or two, and you can quickly organize one. So I don't think employers are complaining that this is a sort of stumbling block. In fact, and also construction workers don't have to face customers or citizens directly, so language won't be a problem. For the green card requirements, perhaps we can talk to institutions, education institutions, and to see whether we can have some sort of leeway. Next, aviation. For the aviation sector, well, there are two kinds. First, customer-facing jobs and then RAM services. For those facing passengers or customers, for the airlines or for the AA to get recruits from mainland, they will initially screen their language abilities. Well, as of now, I don't think they have ever encountered problems in relation to language proficiencies. And then for the RAM services, for imported workers from the mainland, some of them may not have the experience of RAM services and they need to be present in the airport before they can get themselves familiar with the work environment. Well, I think the feedback is such that having the training in Hong Kong is appropriate and things have been running smoothly. Thank you. Next, Mr. Choi. The Assistant Commissioner can take the question. Thank you for the clarification. A word about the language barrier. Well, PLB and coach employers will try their best to recruit drivers from the GBA. For those who don't have Cantonese as the mother tongue, I think when you drive, you don't really have to hold long conversations with the passengers. So as a result of on-the-job training, they are able to cope. As to the training mentioned by members, as the PS has said, we'll try to examine whether certain training modules can take place outside of Hong Kong. I know that there is an operator who sort of hold driving training sessions on the mainland. And they, of course, we know that it is a matter of right-wheel driving and left-wheel driving. And I think they have sort of an enclosed area to train their driving skills suitable for Hong Kong. Well, of course, some members are saying that perhaps the imported workers should be allowed to come First, before having their stay being counted towards the 2-year period. SWD. For the care workers, they're responsible for the personal hygiene and the daily living needs of the residents. It would be best if they're experienced, and usually it is because of their previous experience that they get recruited. But then what's more important is the on-the-job training. This is because they are trained in Hong Kong and within the setting of the employer institution. So what is more important in our eyes is that when they come to Hong Kong, they get training and they get a subsidy. It runs for 3 days, and it's a matter of teaching the trainees how to take care of the residents and how to communicate with the residents. So for the R6, I don't think we have problems. When they come, they start their job on day 1. Ms. Kwok, can you wait for your second round? Just a quick one. I mentioned a very, very important point. I will urge departments make good use of AI in the training. That will save us a lot of time, and it will save us costs. It is the global trend to use AI in teaching. It has been so for quite a period of time, so please consider this. All right, for the last one to speak in the first round is myself. I've got 2 questions. First of all, the construction industry. Second, the PLB sector. After importing the workers, do you have figures to show us that there has been an improvement, like lost trips? And then for construction workers, what about the delays? I want to know about the improvement of the slippage of our construction projects. And then a question for all the bureaus. After importing workers, what about the impact on the local workers? Do you have statistics? Have you carried out a survey to find out whether local workers are suffering from a higher unemployment rate and whether they are seeing a drop or fall in their pay? Development Bureau. Thank you, Chair. Well, regarding the sort of question as to whether the slippage has been sort of shortened, it's difficult to quantify because we may suffer from inclement weather. However, we have to be vigorous in our screening. Well, it is only when they have started work and they know that they haven't got sufficient workers, and if we don't approve their application, they will find it hard to complete the job. So we will only approve such applications. So we are doing the job of a gatekeeper. So that's the first question. And the second question is that we do care about the job security of our local workers. Well, as far as the construction sites are concerned, since July 2023, we started the importation scheme. For the number of skilled workers working at construction sites, there hasn't been a fall. In fact, there has been a slight increase. But of course, recently we have seen a slight increase in the number of imported workers. We can all appreciate that unemployment rates for the construction industry would vary. And then the workload of the private sector has fallen a bit, and then some of the workers responsible for decoration renovation may see a fall in the employment rate. And then I would like to give the floor to another bureau. Yes, Assistant Commissioner.
Now, for failure to meet agreed frequency. Now, because there are relatively more GMB routes in Kwai Ching, I can use it as an example. Now, for PLB sector, 900 places. Now, this is really to make up for only 50% of the shortfall. Now, during peak hours, there is a big demand for vehicles as well as drivers in the PLB sector. Now, for failure to meet designated frequency, because previously the shortfall was 50%, now we've got imported workers. Then during peak hours, the operators can make up for the shortfall in manpower demand and to meet more effectively the agreed frequency. Now, if you look at the number of complaints, and when we meet with members of district councils, we receive the feedback saying that there has been an overall improvement in terms of adherence to frequency. Now, as for the number of vacant places in coach and PLB sectors, now because this is an aging industry, and so there is a large number of vacancies, and the imported workers will go some lengths to improving the situation in that regard. And also recruitment of local drivers is being done simultaneously, but the feedback from the employers is that it is very difficult to recruit local drivers, especially since the median wage for PLB drivers is only 14,000. And because we need to bring in imported workers, so that's why we have already delineated the median wage income for PLB drivers. And so this is the situation with coach and PLB sectors. SWD, now for homes for the elderly, the shortage of manpower is severe, but now the situation has improved. And we have not heard any words saying that local care workers have been displaced out of the job. And if you look at the median wage, actually it's been on the increase. Mr. Siu? Hong Kong needs to import workers for various trades. And I think most of our citizens actually are in support of this. And today we are focusing on homes for the elderly, construction industry, and transport industry. I think the need is well established for imported workers. Now, especially for drivers, but also the same for other workers in other categories. It really takes time for these workers to come into Hong Kong and get familiarized with the Hong Kong environment and the culture. And also, you really need to give them sufficient safety training in order to protect them as well as users of their services. And so most of the people in Hong Kong are in support of this. But of course, cost is an issue, as has been mentioned. Imported workers have to come into Hong Kong for 2 months to receive training only. And the median wage is already $8,000 per head. And so they are not getting minimum wage. They are getting 5 points above minimum wage. And so if you also count in boarding costs as well as subsistence costs, is already 6 to 7 points above median age. And so cost really is the biggest obstacle for employers that potentially want to import imported workers. But of course, I won't delve into this. I think we have discussed this elsewhere within Legislative Council. And I can see that many of my colleagues actually have talked about labor importation scheme beyond the realm of training. And so I will follow their footsteps. Now, for the security industry, the employers in that industry are saying that actually it takes them on average 6 months instead of 4 months to bring in imported workers for the security industry. Sometimes even 8 months. So now we are trying our best to shorten the time needed. So how can you compress the time required? I think maybe another meeting should be scheduled with the Labour Department. Now, there is one thing you really must pay attention to. Now, for cleansing workers, of course, they work for contractors or work for owners incorporated And these bodies will bid for contracts, and the contracts usually for 2 years. So they need to hire workers for the 2-year contract. And so they can only hire workers after they have win the bid. But because it takes half a year for them to bring in imported workers, and so it's already 6 months out of the 2-year contract. And so it's really a difference of 6 months. Now, if the cleansing workers and the security companies are working many sites or many venues, then they can, of course, move people around and juggle things around in order to solve the 6-month gap. But because the requirement is that they can only designate 3 venues. And so that's really a matter of complexity. So how can you make the best use of imported workers and also to help the employers to fill the positions where there is a severe manpower shortage? Why is it that the requirement is that they can only choose 3 positions to fill the imported workers with? Why can't you go with companies? Because if you go by companies, then it is more flexible. And this is precisely because of the contract issue that I mentioned. Is it possible for you to share your insight with me on this? Construction site? Thank you for your question. Now, for a cleansing worker, it is really not within the construction industry labor importation scheme because we're talking about skilled labor under the labor importation scheme. But of course, priority must be given to local workers. Now, for construction industry, in the beginning, because they really need to apply for permission to leave the mainland. And so it really indeed takes quite a bit of time before they can get approval to come to Hong Kong. But now, with the scheme up and running, the time has been shortened to 1 to 2 months. Indeed, we can communicate with the Labour Department and to see how can this issue be best followed up under the Supplementary Labour Importation Scheme. Now, it seems that Development Bureau has already shortened the time required to bring in imported workers to just above 1 month. I think this is a very laudable efficiency, but other industries are not benefiting from this. Is it possible for you to provide more flexibility for the employers in terms of what positions that the employers fill filled with imported workers? And also, one of my colleagues said that they are afraid that imported workers will take jobs from local workers. Now, we are from Liberal Party, and we represent the commerce and business industry. And we must reiterate that we support giving priority to local workers. Now, for the labor importation scheme, you have to know that there is already a gatekeeping safeguard because the employers that would like to bring in imported workers must first take out advertisements locally for 4 weeks in order to hire local workers before they are allowed to bring in imported workers if that advertising campaign fails. And so I think you really have to pay attention to such local advertisements. And you really should do your part in disseminating such advertising information to potential job seekers locally in your industry. But if they are not interested in the positions after seeing the advertisement, then nothing can be done. Next, Mr. Lai Tong Kwok. Now, I'd like to talk about drivers and also the aviation scheme. I understand that you are thinking about whether or not to continue with this scheme. You are reviewing it. I'd like to know concerning the aspects that you are putting under review. Have you considered also allocating places under a contract renewal quota system. Because for certain homes for the elderly, they have a contract renewal quota. Now, as Mr. Yik has pointed out, now for imported workers working at the airport, they really have to get familiarization with apron duties. And after they have completed their first contract, they have basically become a skilled worker for Hong Kong's airport. But upon the expiry of the first contract, they have to go back to the mainland, and then they have to reapply again, and then go through the familiarization program all over again. So is it possible for you to allocate a certain portion of the places under the quota for contract renewal, so that for contracts that are working under a second contract or subsequent contracts, they don't have to go through familiarization again or induction training again? The same logic can be applied to public light bus imported drivers. We've got so many PLB operators. If they are granted a quota to import workers, of course they will import imported drivers. Upon expiry of the first contract, can they get the same quota for hiring imported workers again? If not, then of course everything is off. However, if upon renewal of contract, they can hire drivers without giving them induction training all over again, then I think it really would convenience the employers. Now, you are trying to introduce an importation scheme in order to solve Hong Kong's labor shortage problem in certain sectors. Right now, for Home for the Elderly, imported workers, it seems that you are now requiring imported workers to come in upon expiry of contract to go through induction training all over again. I understand that some imported workers' contract will be up for expiry. Definitely, the government will have to make a very clear announcement as to what's going to happen upon contract and renewal for imported workers, because a lot of the imported workers' contract will be up for expiry towards the end of this year. So for contract renewal quota, will you provide that quota? Do you have any thinking on this? Does this feature in your review? If so, can you let us know exactly what kind of direction you are going into? Now, for construction industry, it's a little bit different. I think Mr. Lai knows about this, because this is project-based and also job category-based. For instance, we're talking about an aircon worker, and if the project is for 6 months, then the quota is for 6 months, and after the project is completed, then the worker will have to leave, and then the quota will be released for other applicants. And so this is a little bit different from other industries. Of course, after the scheme is up and running for a certain period of time, we will review the scheme to see whether there is any room for optimization. But for construction industry, at least for the time being, we will open the scheme for application on a quarterly basis.
Mr. Ma, thank you, Mr. Lai, for his observation. Well, we are thinking about the need to guarantee the continuity of the arrangements. So renewal of the quota would be considered. We'll also make reference to the arrangements for R6. We don't want the service to be sort of suspended. In particular, we are now having the 3-runway system. We need such imported workers to help us to carry out sustainable development. Mr. Choi, I'd like to thank the member for his observation, Mr. Chairman. I think our position is similar. When we evaluate the scheme, We'll try to see what has happened, and we'll try to forecast the future manpower demand. We'll try to see how we can continue to meet the manpower needs so as to provide reliable transport services and stable transport services. When the sector has the need, then we'll try to see how we can make arrangements to facilitate the importation of workers. We'd like to make an early announcement about the future of the scheme, like the quota as well as the renewal arrangements. SWD renewal, we are also working on it. I haven't got anything to add. Next, Mr. Chen Min Kwong, thank you for giving me the chance to have a second go. If I may provide some information to members, there are national standards for jobs, like elderly care workers, career drivers. So they do have benchmarks, they have got requirements concerning their qualifications. Why don't you adopt such? Now, just now, the commissioner said that as long as someone holds a private car driving license, then that person qualifies as an applicant. That worries me. I want to know, so far, have you had any traffic accidents involving such imported drivers? Have you got the figures, and can you share the figures with us? So let us know whether such PLB drivers are involved in traffic accidents. It worries me if somebody can come as long as he has a driving license for private cars only. Why don't you follow the national standards here? Transport Department, let me give a preliminary reply. Let me explain myself in greater details. I'm talking about Class 05 driving license. For the mutual recognition of qualifications, it is restricted to private cars. But then for POB operators, they hope to get drivers that have experience of driving similar vehicles. Well, as to the standards to be based upon, well, I note your observation. We have got the 16-hour training session, and we have got the road test. It's a matter of a statutory requirement. In fact, just now it has been said that for the training and for the attendance or classroom attendance, there are calls to have them organized not in Hong Kong, so as to cut the cost pressure on the employers. Such has been noted by us. SWD. Well, thank you, Mr. Chen, for your reminder. For care workers in the RCH, it's a a job that provides personal service. It is best if somebody is already experienced. Even though they are not experienced, we still welcome them because they can always receive on-the-job training. Do you have figures? The number of imported drivers involved in traffic accidents? Commissioner, no, I haven't got the figures. I don't think there has never been an imported driver getting involved in a traffic accident. How come you don't have the figures? You are importing the drivers into Hong Kong. You must be interested in finding out whether they are ever involved in traffic accidents. You should care for their driving safety records. Well, in fact, we are always watching the development. Coaches, PLBs are under our oversight, and our initial understanding is that so far we haven't received any reports of they getting involved in traffic accidents. They have to take the initiative to report to you, right? Well, at the special FC meetings, there was a question concerning this matter. We have been having close liaison with the operators. Now, for GMBs, should there be traffic accidents, we'll be made aware of them. And then if a imported driver is involved, or in fact, drivers who are involved in track accidents are known to us, well, you haven't done your homework. You should have prepared much better for this meeting. You must have anticipated such a question from us. Yes, please provide the information after meeting. Number of imported drivers involved in traffic accidents. No other questions from members. AOB under the third item on the agenda. Date of next meeting, 13th of May, 10:45 on a Tuesday. We'll look at the reform of the Employee Retraining Bureau, as well as releasing the potential of the workers. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.